Aloha and welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about Module 15, which is Troubleshooting Windows Startup. This is Part 2, CompTIA A Plus Core 2, 220-1102. In this module, we intend to do several things. We're going to describe the boot process from the time you press the power button until the Windows desktop loads. We're going to create bootable media and backups to prepare for Windows startup problems. We're going to implement appropriate Windows tools to solve Windows startup problems, implement appropriate Windows tools to reinstall or reimage Windows, and troubleshoot Windows startup problems. So there's different ways to boot. The term booting refers to the computer bringing itself up to a working state. I think everybody knows that. There's two fundamental ways to boot a computer, including the following. One is a hard boot, sometimes called a cold boot. It involves turning off the power, or turning it on, turning it off. It takes more time than a soft boot because it requires the initial steps that are performed by the BIOS, the UEFI. Then we've got the soft boot, which is also called a warm boot. And that involves using the OS to reboot the system. In Windows, a soft boot is called a restart. So here's how the power buttons work. The power button in front can be configured as a soft power button, causing a restart instead of a full off. And then the reset button initializes the CPU, so it restarts at the beginning of the BIOS UEFI startup. Then the switch on the rear of the case turns off the power abruptly and is a hard power button. That's the one on the power supply. So you hit that and that'll cut you off real quick. So when Windows hangs, first try a restart. If that doesn't work, try a shutdown and then power the system back up. If that doesn't work, you can press the reset button on the front of the case. So there's a heuristic diagram here of the steps to boot the computer and start Windows. So you can go through this, look through this on your own. It's a pretty comprehensive heuristic diagram here. So I'll let you go through that on your own. And here you've also got the steps to boot the computer and start Windows. Continuing on, shows you the OS kernel. It's going to start with activating the hardware abstraction layer, going on to reading more of the registry. So it just goes on and on. So go through this, know the general idea of this. And then here we have a picture of the Windows startup menu. And this is where you can start to troubleshoot problems with your startup. So what to do when before a problem occurs? Well, there's a lot of things that we always talk about that people invariably don't end up doing but regret later. But while your computer is still healthy, you need to do some things here. You need to keep good backups. You need to have a backup plan. You need to have periodic backups, whether it's incremental backups or whatever. You need to have backups on a system. Anything that has data that's important, anything that has data, honestly, you should back it up. You should turn on system restore so that you can revert back to known good states. That's a very important thing. You should also create a system image, and you should configure Windows so that you can use the F8 key at startup. And you also should create recovery boot media. And that got very easy in Windows 10, Windows 11 to do. So what to do before a problem occurs? Again, here's quite the heuristics diagram. This is the methods to boot the system, menus that appear, and tools available and menus used to troubleshoot startup problems. I'm not going to go through this. You can go through this on your own. It's quite detailed and gives you all kinds of options for each step of the process. So the Windows 10, 11 system repair disk. System repair disk is a bootable DVD with Windows repair tools that can start the system and fix problems. To create it, you're going to click on create a system repair disk in the backup and restore from Windows 7 on window. And then you're going to be able to create a 32-bit installation. The 32-bit installation is going to create a 32-bit version of the repair disk, and likewise, a 64-bit will make a 64-bit version of the repair disk. So to use that system repair disk, you're going to boot the system from the disk, then you're going to select your keyboard layout. And then Windows, the RE will be launched at that point, the recovery environment. So with the Windows 10, 11 recovery drive, most computers include an OEM recovery partition on the hard drive that contains the necessary software components needed to restore the system to its factory state. Those are really convenient. If you look in your disk partition utilities, you'll be able to see that there's often it's a hidden partition. Sometimes you'll be able to see it as a separate drive or something like that, but you never want to overwrite it because that's your, that's your OEM recovery partition, and that'll help get you back to factory default settings. It's not going to have all your updates and everything else on there. That's why you need to do your system restores or your backups every once in a while. So a recovery drive is a bootable USB flash drive that can access Windows repair tools. Then if you want to create one of those, you can go into control panel, you click on recovery, create a recovery drive, and then you respond to the UAC dialog box. Got to choose whether you're going to include the system files, then you're going to hit next. It's going to tell you the size of the USB flash drive that you're going to need. You're going to need to insert that. Then you're going to click next and create to begin the process. And then it shouldn't take too long to actually make, because these drives, put it on thumb drive or something like that, it'll take you not that long, because I believe the whole setup is under 20 gigabytes, so it doesn't take that long. So knowledge check. As a computer starts up, you see an error message about the HAL. What is the HAL? I mentioned earlier, but that's the hardware abstraction layer. At what point in startup does this error occur? Well, we know it's hardware abstraction layer, so let's take a look. When the BIOS UEFI is searching for an OS using devices listed in the boot priority order, that doesn't seem right. When Windows attempts to load the user profile, again, that's much further on. That's well beyond when you're learning about your hardware. Then when Windows attempts to launch critical device drivers, that sounds very likely right there, because again, we're talking about the hardware. Then we've got when Windows attempts to launch the Windows kernel, and that sounds less likely, but more so than the other options. So I'm going to go with C here. And the answer is C, when Windows attempts to launch critical device drivers. The hardware abstraction layer is responsible for interacting with device drivers. The kernel loads and activates the HAL before it launches the device drivers. That makes sense. So continuing on, tools for solving Windows startup problems. So if Windows works well enough to get to the Windows desktop, you can use one of the following methods to launch the Windows recovery environment. You can use the Windows 10 settings app. You can do shift and restart. You can do a command prompt, then type in shutdown/R/O for recovery. Then a few of the methods to launch Windows recovery environment when Windows cannot start normally include when Windows detects startup problems and launches automatic diagnostics and repairs, or you can boot from a USB recovery drive, DVD system repair disk, or a Windows setup DVD USB drive. So this is this is an example of Windows automatically launching diagnostic and repair procedures after several restarts within a few minutes. I've had this happen many a times. I inherited a computer system that had a fan that wasn't working. The posts on the fan had actually broken, and I didn't know that. So I was getting occasional restarts. And when I'd go for a little while and it would restart, after a certain number of restarts, it would send me to this page. So yeah, if you've got something going wrong and it keeps on occurring over and over, you're probably going to see this. So Startup Repair. Startup Repair is a built-in diagnostic and repair tool. It can fix Windows system files without changing Windows settings, user data, or applications. Read, non-destructive. You'll still want to have all your stuff backed up, though, just in case something goes wrong. So to run Startup Repair in Windows RE, drill down to the advanced options screen and click Startup Repair. So Windows RE is going to examine the system, fix problems, report what it did, and it might offer you suggestions for further fixes. And a log file of that process will be found at this long thing, Windows 32 files, log files, srt trail.txt. So changing startup settings, the startup settings option on the advanced options screen is available only when Windows RE is launched from the hard drive itself. Keep that in mind, only when it's launched from the hard drive itself. So the following are some of the examples of what these tools can do. Press 1 or F1, you can enable the debugging on it. That's going to move the system boot log files from the failing computer to another computer for evaluation, which is very helpful. If you press 2 or F2, you can enable the boot logging, and that's going to load Windows normally, and then all the files that are used during the load process are recorded on a log file. So that's really nice, so you can look at it later. Then you can also change to enable low resolution video if your video was an issue. This is an example of what that sample log file looks like. So you can see in here all the DLLs and the sys files that were being loaded during the process. And then you can also press 5 or F5 and get enabled safe mode with networking. That way you can get around like device drivers and things like that, messing everything up, but you're still going to have your access to your networking. Press 6 or F6 and you're going to enable safe mode with command prompt. Then you've got 7 or F7 that's going to disable the driver signature enforcement, which is helpful if you've got a driver that's causing that issue. You can press 8 or F8, and that's going to disable the early launch anti-malware driver in case that is stopping you. You can press 9 or F9, and that's going to disable the automatic restart on system. And then F10 is what you're going to do to go back to the startup settings screen. So here we have an example of someone using system restore after booting to safe mode with the command prompt. Yeah, hopefully we never have to get to this point, but yeah, you can do a system restore after booting to safe mode with the command prompt there. And here's where you can permanently disable your automatic restarts if you want. So system restore, you can select and perform system restore from the following. You can do it from the Windows RE Advanced option screen when you're booting. You can go to the Windows 7 System Recovery option screen. You can do it within safe mode. You can also go into a command prompt with the rstrui command. And system restore can cause a problem of its own because Windows updates and updates the anti-malware software can be lost, and software devices and apps might be need to be reinstalled. So yeah, so any Windows updates that you've installed since your last system restore, they'll need to be, yeah, you'll need to reapply every single one of those. And also any, hardware devices, drivers and stuff like that you set up, you're gonna have to redo. So this is the advanced options. So after recent Windows updates, the option to roll back and update appears on the advanced options screen. Yeah, until then it's not gonna actually show up. So you're gonna be able to use this to try to roll that back and fix your system. Because often, when you have a major update or something, there's a chance that, some of the things just aren't gonna work well with your drivers or other things. So you can roll that back. The command prompt window in Windows RE. So you can use the command prompt window with the graphical interface when that's missing or corrupted, or if you want to use a specific command to fix a problem when Windows refuses to start. So a lot of people that are comfortable with the command line interface will use the command prompt window. If you want to access it, you would click on command prompt on the advanced options screen. And some of the examples of how to use the Windows RE command prompt, you can use it to manage data files and system files. You can repair the hard disk. That's one thing, and check for errors. You can wipe the hard disk clean if you need to, and you can enable networking as well. After you've made several reasonable attempts to repair a Windows installation, your next option is to reinstall Windows. This is a little bit more involved, but the following list of options, it's going to start with the least intrusive, and it's go all the way down to what you really don't want to be doing. So you start with going back to the previous version of Windows. You just kind of roll back to that. The next thing you can do is you can try the Windows 10 11 repair installation. You can re-image Windows 10 or 11. You can install Windows 10 11 from the OEM recovery partition. You can try Windows 10 11 reset. And last, but most painful is the Windows 10 11 clean install from setup media. So Windows 10 11 repair installation is the least intrusive. It's a non-destructive installation of Windows 10 11 over an existing installation. Some things you want to keep in mind doing a repair. You're going to create a Windows setup media either on a DVD or, what's a DVD, right? Or USB, or you can save an ISO file on the local hard drive. And you also need to make sure that you can fully boot into Windows 10 11 to do this. Even though all data apps settings should be protected in a repair upgrade, make a backup just in case because things happen. So always have a backup if you can. You also want to gather all the product keys for installed apps to make reinstallation of these apps easier should it become necessary. That goes without saying. So applying a Windows system image. So if you want to apply a system image, to recover your Windows 10 or 11, you need to do the following. You need to reboot the computer into systems or into Windows recovery environment. You need to drill down to the advanced options screen, then go to the system image recovery. And you can install Windows from deployment image on the network as well. This is going to it's going to require you to enable PXE support in BIOS UEFI. Then you're going to need to reboot the computer to the network where it finds and loads Windows PE on the deployment server. So you need to have a server as well here. Then the computer is going to boot to the the PXE, the pre-boot execution environment, and PXE searches for a server on the network to provide that deployment image that you're going to use to re-image the drive. Then you can, we're going to talk here about the OEM factory recovery partition. I really love these because it's nice, like on my HPs, Dells, things like that. We've got usually a partition, small partition. It doesn't need to be that large. It can be, anywhere up to 20 gigabytes, and it'll, have the what you're going to need. So laptops and brand name desktops likely have a recovery partition on the drive. The recovery partition might or might not be hidden. I've seen it both ways. To know how to access the recovery tools stored on the recovery partition, you're going to need to see the manufacturer's website and look up how to go about doing that. So if the laptop doesn't have a recovery partition or the partition is corrupted, you're going to look for the option to download the recovery media from the manufacturer's website. You may have to contact them honestly through email or chat or something like that too. Then once you get that, you can use it to create a bootable USB flash or a DVD. Again, DVD, what's that? So this is your disk management section, and the reason they're having this here is they want to show you that the recovery partition is actually quite small. It's on this one, it's only like 16.38 gigabytes. Doesn't need to be that large. You can have bootable drives, I think, as small as like 20 gigabytes or so. So for Windows 10, 11 reset, this is, once again, it's going up in the order of pain. So the Windows 10, 11 reset, it's going to perform a clean installation of Windows with 3 options. And again, remember, back up all your files prior to. Option 1 is going to keep all your personal files, all the apps, and the settings are lost though. Option 2 is going to keep all your personal files. And if the computer came with Windows pre-installed, you can decide to restore the pre-installed apps from the manufacturer. Often this is bloatware and people don't want to do that. So a lot of times you just say, no, I don't think I will. Option 3 is going to remove everything on the drive, and you can also choose to clean the drive. So if a recovery partition or a recovery drive is present, the system is restored to the factory state. So obviously this is one of the most intrusive things that you can do. So then the Troubleshooting Windows Startup. When you're troubleshooting a startup problem, you need to do the following. You need to identify the problem. In order to do that, you're going to have to talk to the user, what happened, when it happened, had anything changed recently, that kind of stuff. You're also going to need to back up your important data, verify that you have current backups for the system. You're going to establish your theory of the probable cause based on that interview that you had with the user. You're going to research and identify any error messages that you have on there, look in Event Viewer, things like that. You're going to then need to test your theory and resolve the problem. And if that works, then you're going to document your findings, your actions, and your outcomes there. And this process is something that CompTIA loves to test on. So do know this, this general outline of how you go about troubleshooting. Then when you know the source, you can decide which tool will be the least invasive to use, yet still fix your problem. So important data on the hard drive. Always start with the most important question. Is there important data on the hard drive that's not backed up yet? Often the answer to this is yes, almost invariably. So if data is lost or corrupted, you've got the following options. You can use Windows tools, you can use third-party software, you can use commercial data recovery services. You can even use a SATA to USB converter kit, and what that's going to allow you to connect up the internal drive and run it as a USB into another system. And in that new system, you can use Explorer to copy your data across. So that's really convenient. So now we're getting into error messages and problems. So let's say you're starting up and your startup error messages on a black screen. So problems that come in this category. They're usually caused by hardware with the following issues. No operating system is found. You've got a disk read error that's occurred. You can have an invalid boot disk. It'll say sometimes hard drive is not found altogether. You can have disk boot failure, and you can have no boot device found. So these are the ones that are typically associated with that black screen. Then you can also have problems with user profiles. So to fix a slow profile load, you can try the following different tasks. One is you can make sure that the Windows updates are applied. You can run the sfc /scan now to fix problems with the system files. You can reduce the number of startup items that you have on there, and that could be slow, I guess. That would slow it down. You can also apply a restore point that was created before the problem started. That's a nice way to do it, and then you can kind of track and see what changes after that. You can perform a repair installation, or you could just create a new user profile as well. And here's an example of doing that. So when you say you're going to delete a user account in settings, it'll allow you to save the files that were in that person's profile. Now the favorite, one of the oldest ones out there, the blue screen of death, BSOD. So the blue screen of death errors are called stop errors because it comes to a crashing halt. It puts up a message, often doing you no good. But in 10 and 11, I have to admit, they're putting in more information into that. There's even, I think, a QR code that you can scan and look up, bring it directly to the Microsoft knowledge base, where hopefully it doesn't say cannot find this document. Hopefully it'll actually come to something that you can use. Let's see. So the blue screen of death, it happens when processes running in kernel mode encounter a problem and Windows has got to stop the system. Stop error can be caused by a corrupted Windows update, a corrupted registry, system file that is missing or damaged, a device driver that is missing or damaged, bad memory, corrupt or failing hard drive can cause it. So stop errors can occur during or after startup. So do the following when you get a stop error. You should search Microsoft's website for the error. I've seen QR codes on these things, which makes it easier. In the old days, it used to have like a number or something. You'd look that number up and it would bring you to something in the knowledge base. But now I think they have the QR codes that you can just scan and go directly. So you can you should disconnect any peripheral devices that might be causing trouble there. You can reboot the system and read information in Windows error message box or bubble. And if possible, you can restart the system and enable boot logging. That could help as well. That'll let you know what all you got through. And then if you come to one point and you can see it craps out there, you'll know exactly where the issue was. You can try restarting a couple of times. That doesn't fix the problem. You can launch Windows recovery environment and you can restart Windows in safe mode with networking. Again, that'll disable your drivers and things like that and get you in, but it's going to have your networking ability there, so you can still continue to do things like pull down device drivers and look up your issues on Google. Continuing on, errors with hardware and device drivers. If the blue screen names a device or a device driver that caused the problem, you can do the following. You can see if a Windows update might solve that problem. Sometimes there's updated things. Sometimes they break things and they fix it really soon after. But if you have weekly updates set, it may not catch that for another several days. If the driver has been recently updated and the safe mode desktop is loaded, open the device manager and roll back the driver on it. You can consider the device driver might have been updated along with a Windows update. So try returning to a previous version of Windows. That's a little more painful. Or you could use device manager to uninstall the device altogether. And that could get you around the problem. So improper or frequent shutdowns. This is one I mentioned earlier. I had that going on. It indeed was an overheating issue with my fan because the fan assembly was not making good contact because of broken posts on the side. It wasn't making good contact in the CPU. So yeah, so I had to get a new replacement. Well, what happened in the meantime was I was getting frequent crashes, and it wasn't at the same place or anything else, but I did notice that after it ran for a while and the system started heating up and everything, it would crash. So that led me to thinking that I've got an overheating issue going on. So I checked, and sure enough, I saw those posts were broken, bought the new replacement drive and put that in there with a little bit of thermal paste on it. Haven't had any trouble since. Runs like a new system. Here it says proper problems with the improper frequent shutdowns can be caused by overheating, hardware problem, or the Windows kernel. So you can check your event viewer for clues here. You can apply the Windows updates, verify that your memory is working okay with using the memory diagnostics tool, or you can do a check disk /r to check the hard drive for errors. That's always helpful too. You should also consider that the Windows might be corrupted. So try the least invasive solutions to repair Windows, while keeping your user data and stuff like that. So which tool is the least invasive solution to repair Windows? Is it System Restore? Well, let's see. System Restore is going to restore it to a point in time. You could have a lot of stuff that you have to install after that. I would say that's pretty odious. Let's not go with that. Startup Repair. So Startup Repair, what's that going to do for us? Startup Repair is going to allow us to fix some of the files in there. A Windows reset is going to reset the system, and our last one is going to be to uninstall updates. Uninstalling updates is going to be a little bit more of a problem because it could be doing several things at once. So I am going to say it's between Startup Repair or Windows Reset, or no, sorry, I'm going to go with, I think, Startup Repair. So because, yeah, everything else is going to be pretty long, whereas Startup Repair, you could just be fixing a couple of files in there. And yes, Startup Repair would be the least invasive there. So as they say, Startup Repair is least invasive because it only repairs critical Windows system files, services, and drivers. So in summary, now that we've gone through this whole lesson, you should be able to describe the boot process from the time that you press that power button until the time that Windows desktop loads. You should be knowledgeable about creating bootable media and backups to prepare for Windows startup problems, and really do that in advance. One other thing I didn't mention earlier was get an idea of what your baseline is for your, looking at your CPU usage and everything else. It's a good idea to get a baseline, an idea of where your disk usage runs, where your CPU stays at, so that when you go back later, if you're having trouble, you can look at that and kind of figure out whether you've got, gee, the hard disk is, unusually taxed right now, or gee, the CPU is running higher than it usually does. Things like that can really point you to the errors. So we've taught you here how to create bootable media and backups to prepare for the Windows startup problems, how to implement appropriate Windows tools to solve Windows startup problems. We've gone through implementing appropriate Windows tools to reinstall or re-image Windows. And we've talked about troubleshoot Windows startup problems, from the black screens to the blue screens of death, things like that. So hopefully this has been informative. A lot of people get this the hard way. I actually went through most of this on my own. In the old days, we just had the option often of try to repair some of the files, which never seemed to help, or we could do a full reinstall of the system, which sadly we had to do way too much. Windows 10 and 11 makes it a little bit easier in this regard. You've got all kinds of tools. Since I think Windows 7, or maybe even before, you've had system restore points that really help you roll back, and that's a wonderful tool. But you have a lot of tools at your disposal here to troubleshoot that now. So if you have any questions about this module or anything else, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help. So until the next lesson, take care, and I'll see you then. Aloha.